Welcome to the Marketplace Midland podcast, where we highlight a monthly speaker that shares helpful tools for all of us to integrate timeless biblical principles into our modern business.
My name is Brooks Perry. I'm Chaz's brother, and I got the pleasure of introducing him here today. But I had to write it out. I'm not, this is not my deal, really. But today I'm really just honored to be able to sit here and introduce Chaz, my brother, who's going to be sharing his testimony with us today. Chaz has been one of the most constant, influential people in my life since kind of the earliest days growing up. Growing up together, we shared countless adventures, kind of everything from childhood adventures to teenage mischief, and kind of the bigger journeys, kind of into young adulthood and into adulthood. We grew up together, we laughed together, learned a lot together, but most importantly, with our parents and our family, we grew in our faith together. Rare faith in life, the highs, lows, in between, the changes. One thing that stood out that I just talked about is Chaz's deep, unwavering faith in God. From my perspective, when he started his own family, that faith became the really foundation of everything that he's kind of worked out for. As a husband to Lindsay and to a father to his 3 kids, Chaz is a steady rock. He leads with love, he provides security, and shows her what it means to walk faithfully day in and day out. But Chaz's witnesses go far beyond home. He treats everyone he meets with genuine kindness. He'll stop to sit down and meet with anybody and really listen. He'll offer advice when you ask him to, not just give it to you unwanted. And he's simply just present in a way that is just true and kind. That has been something that I really admired about him from an early young age. Whether it's serving at church or showing integrity at work, working with people inside of work and outside. He's being a quiet example at home. His life speaks volumes through his actions. He really just isn't my brother. He's a living testimony to God. So I am honored to be here to introduce him today.
Don't let Brooks fool you. I'm the introvert of the family, and I often get when I meet somebody, it's like, you're Brooks's brother. So I'm thankful for that and special words. So thank you very, very much. I'm gonna start a clock so I don't take too long. I appreciate you guys inviting me to be here. When Kyle called and asked me to speak, I was completely humbled for the fact that I'd have the opportunity to speak in front of a group of men like we've got in this room. I also started to think and pray of what do I talk about? Business, family, life, testimony. And as I processed through that, it became abundantly clear I needed to really focus on the past 6+ years of my life. Our family's gone through a lot. But it really has changed the way I look at each one of those pieces of my life. I don't want to discount the early parts of my life. To Brooks's point, we've had a lot of fun. We've had a lot of adventures, new beginnings, children, business startups, successes, failures. Kind of go down the list. I know each one of you guys have a similar story, but it was abundantly clear that I needed to focus on the past 6 years. So this was the summer of 2019. My daughter was 5, Anna Kate. My middle son, Charlie, was 8, and my oldest son, Will, was 10. We were traveling to California, and my wife started to get extreme headaches, to the point half the vacation she was in the room. Every time she lifted her head up, she'd throw up. So we got back, we made it back home, started looking at doctors, and everybody we went to kept saying, these are migraines. So they treat for migraines, it didn't work. We went to the next doctor, treat for migraines, didn't work. Kept getting worse and worse. So we're about 3 weeks in, and we're on our third doctor, and they're having her go through basically a process, kind of checking you from head to toe, to see if they could figure out what's wrong with her. So we're 4 days in, and it's gotten really bad. She can't get out of bed. She's sleeping almost the entire day. So I'm chasing kids around, and it's still the summer, so we've got football and basketball and fun stuff, and she's just at home. So she was supposed to take blood on Thursday, a Thursday afternoon. I remember this vividly. And I couldn't physically get her out of bed. She said, I can't go. And I called the doctor. I said, look, I can't get her out of bed. I know we need to give blood. We've got to get through this process to figure out what's going on here. But I can't get her out. She said, no problem. If you can get her here before 8 tomorrow, it'll just be her and the blood technician. She'll be able to get her blood taken, get her in and out, and you guys can get back home. I know she doesn't feel well. So I got her there. They took her back, started to take her blood, and I was up front talking to the receptionist. A lady, I wish I knew her name, but we know for a fact she was an angel in our lives at that point. I started to tell her what was going on, and she said, this lady may have had a high school education, I don't know. But she says, that doesn't sound right. I'm gonna order her an MRI, and when the doctors get here, or when the nurse gets here, I'll have her sign off. So you guys, I know she doesn't feel well. I can get her into Odessa, and I'll have her be able to get her in and out. I said, thank you for hearing me. Like we've been to 3 different doctors. Nobody's even offered the idea that an MRI is even something we need. They've just attributed this to migraines. While she was back there, they actually gave Lindsay a shot. I don't know what it was, but it was the most coherent I'd seen her in almost a month. And so as we were driving to Odessa, we were having a great conversation, and we thought, man, this is awesome. Maybe we found something that's actually going to help. So we get to the MRI lab, and they take her back, take her MRI, and we're waiting about an hour and a half, and the MRI technician brings us back and said, you need to get to your doctor now. And I said, is everything okay? And he just replied, you need to get to your doctor now. So we were walking out. Both of us are kind of confused. Once again, Lindsay's doing really well at this point. And I walk out the door and I get a call from her doctor. She said, where are you? I said, we're walking out of the MRI lab. We're heading to your office. She said, get here as fast as you can. So I'm between Midland and Odessa. I'm going as fast as I can, trying to get to the doctor's office. Obviously, a lot's processing through both of our minds at this point of what's going on. Can't get any answers. We pull up to the office, and there's 3 doctors waiting outside. They grab Lindsay, take her inside, and her doctor pulls me aside and pulls up her phone, and it's obviously an image of a brain, but there's this huge black spot right here. I was like, what is that? She said, that's a brain tumor, and I've never seen anybody with a tumor that size and they still be living. I said, I don't know this for a fact, but I would assume she had minutes to live at this point. I mean, my heart's racing. I called my mom. I said, look, we're at the doctor. Just got the news that Lindsay's got a brain tumor. They've got her hooked up to an IV of steroid, trying to reduce the swelling on her brain. I don't know anything other than that, but can you please get the kids? They've got emergency surgery set at Midland Memorial now. So they get that IV in, they rush her to Midland Memorial, run her straight back. Surgeons are strubbed in, ready to go. And kind of from a time frame, we're talking about a 30-minute span here. I mean, it's not like we've got hours here. This is a very short amount of time that we're kind of working with. They take her back, and they realize that the steroid was actually doing its job. Her brain had stopped swelling, but the tumor was growing very fast. And they said, look, we can do this here. We do about 4 of these a month. But you know, if you do want to go somewhere else, there's places that do this on a daily basis, 10 times a day. I'd text a few friends that are doctors that I highly respected, and it was abundantly clear that we did not want to be in Midland. We wanted to be at a place where they did this a lot, and it was between UT Southwestern and MD Anderson. Anything cancer I've ever heard, you need to be at MD. So I needed to make a decision quickly, and I just stopped and I prayed. I said, God, please give me an audible or visible answer of where we need to be. And no lie, a few seconds later, my brother-in-law called and said, hey, I just heard from my dad what's going on with Lindsay. I'm playing golf with the largest medical equipment salesman in the United States. And he said, if you can get into UT, they've got the best brain program in the United States. I was like, thank you, Jesus. You answered my prayer. So I told the doctor, I said, we want to go to UT. They called and said, this very rarely happens, but they've got an open bed for her. And so once again, answered prayer. We got, they were going to fly her to Dallas, but they thought the pressure from being in a plane could cause so much pressure on her brain that it'd kill her. So they hooked her up to IVs, and she was medically transported in a ambulance. I followed behind in my car. Once again, she's coherent at this point. And so, I mean, driving, texting, I love you, praying for healing, praying for miracles, kind of all the things, praying for our kids. And I called my mom, and she had gotten my kids, and this is where the true blessings came in. Like my brother, sister-in-law, their kids, my sister, brother-in-law, their kids, like they all dropped everything they did. And I'm not just talking about them. The Jesus' church showed up for us. We were getting texts, calls from people literally all over the world. I mean, this was within probably a 3-hour span at this point. The story had started to get out. So my family had grabbed my kids. They'd rented us a house in Dallas that had a kind of a front house and then a back house for Lindsay and I when we got out of the hospital. But just to love on our kids, serve them, and for that I'll forever be grateful. We get to Dallas, UT around midnight. They immediately take her back, take an MRI. The tumor was growing. I mean, it had already grown in that short amount of time, but the swelling had stopped. So they said, we don't need emergency surgery, but we're going to prepare for surgery in the next day. We had people come and just love on us at the hospital, pray with us, bring us food. I mean, just any physical need, emotional need that we possibly had was just being met without us asking. So we get to next day, and they're preparing Lindsay for surgery. And the doctor brings me back. He said, Chaz, look, this is going to be an 8 or 9 hour surgery. There's a 50-50 shot she makes it out of the surgery alive. If she does, be prepared that we're really working with some delicate areas here, that her speech is probably going to be impaired. Motor skills are going to be impaired if she has any at all. So he really was preparing me for the worst, but he said, all that being said, our goal is to get as much of this tumor out of her body as we possibly can. I said, okay, doc. She goes in, and that 8 hours might as well have been 10 years. Time had literally stopped. People were there praying for me, but I was legitimately numb. I hadn't slept. And so we get to kind of that 8 hour mark, and the doc comes out, brings me back, and said, hey, good news, she made it through. They're replacing they're covering her brain with a plate where they had to remove her skull, and they had to make a decision from here to here to pull her scalp back to get there. They're sewing her up, but she's doing good. Bad news is the tumor was actually larger than what we had thought. It was that fast growing. When we cut into that cyst, her brain started to shift and messed up our plan of what we were going to actually remove from her brain. The tumor. I was like, well, that's not good. And he goes, yeah, we're going to have to go back in a week from now and get the rest of it. But we did get enough for a biopsy. So at this point, my prayer had been, Lord, please heal her, miraculous healing. Lord, when you open her up, let there not be a tumor. This is just a mistake. My prayer quickly became thanks that she made it through the surgery, and then next that please let it not be cancer. We're at the hospital for a couple days, and this is where it really got tough. She was healing, and then once again, kind of going back to my family, they had my kids at the house, and they had, cousins, aunts, uncles were just there loving on my kids, taking them. They obviously knew mom was sick, but they were just loving on them. Lindsay was obviously, she hadn't been able to see him kind of in this whole time frame. So she was desperate to see her kids. When we got there, we walked into the door, and everybody was obviously very excited to see us except my daughter. Lindsay's face was completely black on this side from bruising. She had a turban of gauze on her head. She was hunched over. She was walking with a walker. And my 5-year-old daughter was terrified. She wasn't seeing her mom. That moment I saw, and Lindsay has been a rock through all of this. She's a fighter. She always will be. But that was a moment I saw a crack in her spirit. And so we hung out for a little bit, went to that back house, and she started bawling. And we'd obviously talked in the hospital of, we need to do the second surgery. We've got to do this. And during that moment, she's like, yeah, whatever we need to do. That was terrible. That was horrible. I'm in so much pain. I'm scared. It's like, I am too, but we got to do it. We got to that back house. She said, I don't know if it's worth it. And my heart broke. So that afternoon, my aunt had called and asked if one of her friends could come over and pray with us. And I said, sure, that'd be awesome. So he came over, we were talking, and he started telling us a story about God's hope. And that in this story, he knew that Jesus showed up by a butterfly landing on his shoulder. And Brooks knows this, butterflies are a big deal in our family. We had a cousin that passed away at one from meningitis. We walked out of the church and there were 100,000 butterflies outside. And we knew she and Jesus were there with us. So there's been multiple things in our life where butterflies have been a big deal. So that was a huge connection point for us. He started to pray and I got a call from the hospital. I was getting 5 to 6 calls a day from the hospital. When they called, I had to answer. So I stepped away while he was praying. And it was the doctor, and he said, "Chaz, it's not good." And let me back up for a second. I had done some Googling, and you Google brain tumor, and there's nothing good. So I took Lindsay's phone away prior to. I said that we don't need to be going down bad paths here. But I'd done some research, so I had her phone. And he called and said, "It's not good. It's cancer." And I said, "Well, what is it?" And he said, "It's a glioblastoma." And I'd done enough research to know that was a death sentence. Like people that live beyond 12 months, there's multiple zeros in front of the percentage point. So I knew what it was, but I asked him, I was like, "What does that mean?" He goes, it's almost always fatal. But we feel really good about Lindsay's case. We've got to get that tumor out. I said, "Okay." So I hung up, and for those that know me, well, I'm not a crier. I've cried more during that period of my time than I probably have in my entire life combined. I started bawling. They were still inside. I pulled it together a few minutes later and walked inside, and as he was finishing the prayer. And I thought to myself, I can't tell her this right now. She's already on the brink with our daughter. How in the world can I break this news to her? So we spent that evening just talking, praying, crying. And that night, after she went to bed, I'm not a guy that does this often, I should, but I got on my knees and I prayed all night long. I prayed that Jesus would heal her. I prayed that he would heal that relationship between Anna Kate and her. I prayed that that he would just perform a miracle. The one thing that I realized during that time on my knees, of all the things I was praying for, they were fairly selfish. It was, "Jesus, what can you do for me?" And I knew I hadn't prayed this prayer, but I didn't want to. But I knew I hadn't prayed, "Lord, your will be done." But that night I prayed that prayer, and I knew what it meant, but no lie, there was a weight that came off my shoulders like I couldn't even explain. And I know there was stresses, all these different things, but the minute I stopped hanging on to these corners of, "Jesus, what can you do for me? This is my plan," versus, "I'm ready to follow your plan," this weight was lifted. So that next morning, I called my mom. I said, "Hey, can you come back here and help Lindsay put on some makeup to cover up the bruising as much as we can? I don't know if you can get a big hat, cover up her head, help her take a shower. Let's bring her some clothes back. And I'd love to grab Anna Kate and let's just go for a walk." So she came back, helped me get Lindsay ready. And we're walking out of that back house. And the minute we opened the door, there's a huge butterfly sitting outside our door. And we knew Jesus was with us. We both started crying. A few seconds later, Anna Kate walked out the back door with my dad, and she came sprinting to Anna Kate and gave her this huge hug. And I said, "Thank you, Jesus." So we walked. It was a great morning. I had this lingering conversation I was going to have with my wife that afternoon, but the minute Anna Kate latched onto her, I saw that fight back in her eye. That spirit was lifted. She was ready. So that afternoon, I said, "We got something hard to talk about." I said, the doctor called. And it's cancer. I didn't tell her what kind, I just said it's cancer. I said, we're gonna fight this. They feel really good about your diagnosis, but we've got to get that tumor out, and then we've got to get this treatment started. She said, I'm ready. I'm scared, but I'm ready. I was like, I hear you. So we go back in for that second surgery a few days later, and Doc pulls me back. I basically get the same speech, but this time he said, hey, since we're having to open her back up, we're going to be able to put these sensors on her brain, and we'll be able to test whether or not this is going to affect her motor skills, speech, personality. Kind of, it's amazing what they can do. The goal here is still to remove as much of the tumor as we possibly can, but if there's a portion of it we can leave without affecting it, we're going to do it. It's like, man. So this terrible situation about having to go back for a second surgery seemed awful, maybe turning into an answered prayer and a blessing. So she goes in, kind of the same thing. It's another 8-hour surgery. Doc comes out, tells me everything's good. They do not feel like they had to remove any part of the brain that was going to affect those pieces. And I was like, man, that's incredible. He sat there with me while they stitched her up. And on a side note, this is just how people served us so well. I later found out that doctor missed the birth of his 4th child to sit there with me and make sure Lindsay came out of surgery. So just people continuing to serve us. She gets out of surgery. We're in there a few days, and then we're able to leave, and she's able to heal on her own until we start chemo and radiation. And so after there's enough time passed, we go in and we're meeting with our radiologist. Once again, she still doesn't know she's got a glioblastoma. She knows she's got cancer, but she now knows they removed, the vast majority of the tumor, and we're going to be on this path to healing. So we walk into the radiologist's office, and there's an old cowboy, and he said, you know what you got? He goes, yeah, I've got cancer. And he goes, yeah, you got a glioblastoma. You got 8 to 12 months. He said, most people have 8 to 12 months to live. She started bawling. I was ready to fight this guy. I was like, man, I've been able to protect her from this news, which maybe that was naive, maybe that was arrogant of me to think that was going to be the case. But I was trying to protect my wife. He quickly realized that was the wrong thing to say. I would have assumed he probably thought we had already had this conversation. He said, but we feel really good about your case. Second doctor that said this. He said, most people that walk in with this type of cancer, they're older. They don't have a lot to live for. They're ready to move on. Said, you're young, you're healthy, you've got kids that love you, you've got a husband that loves you, you got a family that loves you. I see them up here all the time. So we need to get there. He said, the problem with this is most patients that we do this, all we're trying to do is stunt the growth of this tumor for as long as we possibly can. And typically that's 8 to 12 months. So we're not real worried about what the radiation or chemo is going to do beyond that. We're going to hit it with as much as we possibly can. And, we're basically trying to help you get your affairs in order. We feel really good about you. So if we do the typical treatment, we'll blast basically your entire brain, but what that poison's going to do is going to turn your brain into Swiss cheese over 3 to 5 year period. The other way we could do it is we could basically just focus on that cavity, blast it as hard as we can, and it really won't affect that, all the other things I just talked about. You're not going to turn your entire brain into Swiss cheese. But the problem with that one, if this comes back, I'm not going to be able to do this anymore. And since you did not do the typical protocol, most of the clinical trials will not let you actually join their program because you've messed up their protocol of kind of the other treatment people have taken. So neither one of those sound great, Doc. I said, let us think on and pray for it. It was a few days before our birthday. So he calls about 7:30 on our birthday. I was like, man, is this guy really calling to give me more bad news on our birthday? And I said, hey, Doc, how are you? I said, good. Is Lindsay there? I said, she's asleep, but I'll go wake her up. And we've got some very, very close friends that just gave us their apartment in Uptown Dallas. So we were looking for, should we go back to Midland? Should we be here? We felt really comfortable with UT, so we decided we wanted to be in Dallas, but then it's finding a place to live. And we just, once again, people showed up, loved us, gave us an apartment to live in. So he called, I put her on speakerphone, and he immediately yelled, happy birthday. He said, hey, me and my team have been up for 2 days straight. He said, I've come up with a hybrid plan for you. We're going to hit that cavity really hard, and then we'll be able to get around the peripheral. And we feel really good about this plan. I said, well, what if this comes back and we need to do the clinical trials? And he goes, I've called them all. He said, I've showed them our plan. If this happens, they all said they'll accept her. I was like, my gosh. I mean, look at this guy that has hundreds, if not thousands of patients, and him and his team just spent 2 full days coming up with a plan for my wife. So that's incredible, Doc. Thank you so much. Let's get going. So the plan, we're kind of in the school, and the plan was for my mom was helping with the kids. The plan was when she started treatment for me to go back to Midland, be with the kids, let them go to school, and then and my mom and aunt would help Lindsay get to her appointments during the week. And then on weekends, me and the kids would fly and see her. Her first treatment was awful. They make a mask of your face that holds you completely still. And she walked out and said, I can't do this without you guys. So I come back to Midland. I set up meetings with the kids' principals and teachers. I say, look, guys, I know you guys know what's going on. I know you guys have been praying. I know you guys are with us, but I'm going to have to pull the kids out. Lindsay needs us. And without hesitation, they all said, we will do whatever we need to do. We will send the kids' work to you guys. We will fly to Dallas on weekends to tutor your kids. We will do whatever we can to help serve y'all. Once again, just completely humbling. Jesus' church just continues to show up for us. She started chemo. Her body would not actually accept the chemo. So her blood counts would never get above really the levels they needed to for her. She would take pills once a month for a week, and for an entire year, she made it through 2 cycles. So for all intents and purposes, we're now down the road, 2 surgeries. We've got a hybrid radiation program, and chemo's not working. So for all intents and purposes, everything that the doctors say we need to do to help heal her, or at the very least prolong her life, we haven't done. Like it's just not working. So we continue to pray. We continue to walk through this. And now we're 6 years down the road. So we've gone through all of these different components. She's now beat a cancer that is really unbeatable. We still have to go to the hospital every quarter and get an MRI, but we know Jesus healed her body. We know he did. And our first oncologist was a believer, and he said, look, there's going to be a lot of people that tell you that we do have a great hospital. We got great radiologists. We got great oncologists, but statistics show this is not beatable. So just know that you are a miracle. And so kind of walking through that, we often ask ourselves, we ask Jesus, why? Why did you spare her life? And we've walked through doors that we felt were open and quickly closed. We walked through, I'm sure we walked through some closed doors that remain closed, but we really feel like God has us exactly where we need to be right now. We've walked and we're walking through with people that are walking through cancer right now, that some have been very happy stories, some have been very, very, very sad stories. But the point is that we're there with Jesus, and this is his story, not ours. So I mean, those that know you, I'm the introvert of the family. This is not a place that I'm comfortable up here talking to a bunch of guys, but I do know that this is not my story to tell, it's Jesus's. And so if we can proclaim his glory, I think that we all need to do that. That was probably one of the scariest, well, it wasn't probably, it was the scariest time in my life. And I would never, ever, ever want to go back to that time in my life. But it was also the most freeing. So when you get to a place, and I don't know why I'll speak for myself. I don't know why I don't live my day this way every single day of my life. But the minute that we stop holding on to corners and we give everything to Jesus, life becomes pretty easy because it's all his. To wrap things up, just a few things that I try to remind myself on a daily basis. Relationships are so important. We felt so much love during this time of our lives. Jesus built relationships daily. We should too. Embrace the people you love. Give them hugs. Tell them you love them. Because we just don't know, fellas. Second, everybody's got a story. We all need to share it. Mine's crazy and wild. I know we all have our own stories that we need to share with folks. You never know who you're going to run into, that somebody may be walking through the same exact thing you are. So if you feel called, you need to share that story with people, because Jesus has a fingerprint on all of our lives. He's writing all our stories. So none of these stories are ours. They're all his. So share them. Life's a vapor. I'm reminded of that daily, that Jesus didn't promise us tomorrow. So anything you can do today, love on today, serve somebody today, do it. I'm talking to myself here, guys. Like I've got to remind myself on a daily basis. Life gets busy, it gets full. A lot of us have kids, families, work. All those things are important, but just remember that we're not promised tomorrow. And lastly, everything's God's, even our lives. So each day that we kind of walk through these lives, and we think we have control and are kind of pulling back and kind of tugging on these different corners, and we say, Jesus, I got this. Just know that it's not ours. We're here on this earth for however long Jesus is going to allow us. And I'm not up here to preach to you guys. I'm just up here telling his story. So, but just know that it's all his, and we need to remember that. And just to kind of wrap everything up, we're so thankful for so many people throughout this process, and we're still thankful. Some people are very close friends and family. Some people I don't know who they are. I'll never see their face. I'll never know their name, but I know they were there praying for us and loving on us. I do know that God puts us in places and situations for a reason. And none of us know what the future looks like, but I don't believe in coincidences anymore. And but I truly know that Jesus has a plan for each of us. So thank you guys for having me.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Marketplace Midland podcast. Please join us next month with speaker Alan Peters.